Hello and welcome to another episode of Earth Your While. I'm Jack.
And I'm Ellie. This is the podcast where we chat to industry experts and sustainable business leaders as we try to uncover the easiest and most effective ways to make your business better for the planet.
Today we're joined with Adam, aka, this is my research bit, aka Mr. Junk Food Chef. He was the founder and visionary, that's what it says on your LinkedIn, of the multi-award winning global initiative, the Real Junk Food Project, and is now CEO of Surplus to Purpose. In 2014, you were voted one of 40 most influential men in the world by Ask Men, apparently. You did a TED Talk in 2015, and in 2017, The Telegraph voted you one of the 50 most influential people in food and drink. And according to Wikipedia, you may have fed 1 million people with surplus food. I'm not
1
even...
million?
No, that's what it says. The Real Junk Food Project. Under your Feed Bellies Not Bins manifesto. And you were honoured with an Unsung Hero Award by the Canal and River Trust in 2022. For your positive impact on the community. And now you're writing a book. Oh, and you're also a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts.
I didn't know I had a Wikipedia page. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, there's so much about you online. Yeah.
I'll have to have a look at it, see what people say about me.
I know, crazy. So yeah, big intro.
Yeah, thanks for
Welcome.
coming on the podcast.
What it's actually 19 million people, not 1 million, but I'll take 1 million, I don't mind.
19 million people.
Wow.
8,000 tons is about 19.5 million meals, yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Nice. We need to get that updated then, that Wikipedia page.
Yeah, Wikipedia needs updated. I might have to go on and update it. Oh, yeah. And I was one of the 40 most influential men in the world, and it's still there. You can just log on to the link and Ask Men. If you go to Ask Men, Great Men Give or something it's called. It's like Leonardo DiCaprio, Bill Gates, and then right at the bottom there's just this like random picture of me, and it's just stayed there ever since. So it just says like 7 years next to it or something after. It just keeps adding on every year. I don't know why they made it. I mean, it's just really cringy, but yeah, I use it sometimes depending on what setting I'm in. So it applies, I guess, in some way, shape, or form. Yeah.
Wow.
But I got all these things like 6-7 years ago. I don't seem to get anything now. So maybe I was great then. I'm not so great anymore. I don't know.
Cool. Well, epic intro. So, possibly the most award-clad person we've had on here by the sounds of it.
Yeah, definitely.
I guess the first thing we're thinking, just tell us a bit about like your story and what your mission is, what you're trying to do.
Yeah, so I'm born and bred in Leeds. I'm 37 now, so I've been here most of my life, but I've travelled around the world as well. I had a very dysfunctional life in Leeds, so I ended up in care, addicted to drugs and alcohol, homeless. I was sectioned as a kid, abused, everything happened to me. And then after a really serious suicide attempt where I was pronounced dead at the scene around 10 years ago, I obviously didn't die, but I was pronounced dead by the police that found me. I went to Australia, and that's where I came up with the idea of creating what was known as the Real Junk Food Project, which is an organisation that basically was trying to highlight the environmental issues of surplus food rather than the social issues, which is something I passionately speak against. I don't believe the two should be entangled together. So yeah, ever since around about 9-10 years ago now, I've just been on this mission to basically highlight the absurdity and the abhorrent amount of waste that's in the system, the amount of edible food that exists that is destroyed unnecessarily, and just try to do good things with it as much as I can.
Cool.
In a nutshell.
Yeah, because I think so according to the World Food Programme, they're saying that a third of all food produced each year is lost or wasted. And if food waste through a country, it would be the third biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions. When you hear like stats like that, does that make it all seem a bit overwhelming for what you do? Or does that kind of spur you on a bit more?
When I set up the Real Junk Food Project, it was the 22nd of February 2013, and I was stood on a farm in Melbourne, north of Melbourne, and I said, I'm going to feed the world and stop all this waste. That's what we set out to do. I said, I'm going to go feed the world. I haven't fed the world. I've fed a lot of people, but I haven't fed the world. But it wasn't that I was going to stand there with a massive pot of stew and go, and these people just line up who need it, and I'm going to feed you all. It was more about how could I empower people to and educate them around some of the problems and try to create systematic changes. That's what it was about. So I was aware of the scale of the problem, and the stats that you've read out there, Ellie, they're not even a conservative guess. You know, they have no idea how much food's wasted. Yeah. It's not measured anywhere in the world. You know, supermarkets don't have to reveal their waste. It's not compulsory. I deal with a lot of waste that is hidden. So manufacturing and catering products, like you can see behind me, you know, I've got drinks that have come out of the system that have not been classed as waste, but have been classed as not sold. So if something cannot be sold and is wasted, it can be written off. However, I can pay like 1 penny for these pallets, and then it goes through as a transaction, so it doesn't go as waste, even though it would have been wasted. So, and those relationships are happening all over the world with millions of people involved in transitioning all this food from different locations and trying to get rid of it. And then it gets to a point where somebody can't get rid of it anymore, so they can't sell it at car boots or in marketplaces or online. And eventually it comes to me, and then I find weird and wonderful ways of getting rid of it. So there's a lot more food than the World Food Programme and WRAP and all these other organisations are aware of. They do focus on household waste, which really annoys me, because I feel like the responsibility is then shifted away from the industries and more focused on individuals, when really it's not our fault. You know, we get strawberries 365 days a year, but we didn't ask for strawberries 365 days a year. You know, the supermarkets are just supplying them, and then we purchase them, but then it's our fault purchasing them. There's not a lot of manipulation in the industries that cause people to shop a certain way. So to put the emphasis on us as consumers, I find really hard and difficult. But yeah, when it comes to those figures and stats, like, I'm more than aware of what's happening. I'm also more than aware of what the reality of the situation is and how bad it really is. And for me, that's the thing I want to get across to people, is just how bad, how serious, how big this problem actually is, and just how much impact it can have on us as a planet, because we've got to start thinking globally and stop thinking small scale, because things are getting much worse, much quicker. I know we're all trying to do our very small bits, but this is going to take a mammoth effort to try and deal with some of the global issues now that we're all facing. And it affects us all, and food is pivotal to all of that, you know, in terms of how much we produce, where it goes, and then what we do with it at the end of the result in terms of waste management. It's all affected by our environments. And yeah, so the stats for me are, yeah, they're big and they're scary and it's wrong, but it's nowhere near the reality of what's actually happening. And that's something that I feel like we need to be brave about. I think we're not brave enough to talk about it, or we're not brave enough to talk about who's involved in that issue. And I think people need to be much more braver, because I think then we can maybe start tackling some of these issues rather than just pushing them to one side and thinking they're going to go away.
Have things changed much since you started with this food waste problem with the industry?
I mean, when I first started, there was only me doing like surplus food. I was in a cafe cooking it for people, and like I had like 20 people a week visiting the cafe. And now there's millions of cafes across the world, and a lot of them have been inspired by the work that we did, and we helped create a lot of them, and a lot of them saw what we were doing and went off and did it. And then we opened a supermarket 3 years later in 2016, and then loads of people started opening supermarkets and food pantries. And I think we just kind of inspired people to accept that this is food that wouldn't have been sold, and yet it's edible. Because I think the perception before was food waste was a big pile of rotten fruit in a field, and it's not. It's perfectly good food, as you can see behind me, and drinks and products which can't be sold. So I think our behaviour around food has changed, and especially surplus food. It's much more accessible now than ever before. and more people are susceptible to consuming these products and just seeing it as food rather than waste food or surplus food. So that's changed massively, especially in the last 10 years. The accessibility, like I said, it's really easy now to get hold of access to surplus food. So if you wanted to go to your local supermarket and start a food project, if you wanted to create a food bank, if you wanted to set up some kind of soup kitchen, the access to that food is greater than ever before, not just from the supply chain, but also from the third sector. So I support projects that are doing things around food as well. So people come to me, but then they also go to like the retailers to try and get food from them. So that's changed. That's usually changing. A lot of that is down to the bravery of us on the team at the time in 2012, 2013 of going out there and saying this is wrong and somebody needs to do something about it. Now all the retail industry and wholesale industry has created processes and apps now that you can access, like Too Good To Go, FairShare, Kaboodle, Co-op. There's loads of them now where you can access food pretty easy. You can buy surplus food at the end of the day. So a lot of that has been inspired by the fact that we proved that people and processes can do this safely, and it gave the confidence to the industry that they could also do it as well, which is something that I always championed. Staff canteens shouldn't be made up of food that the retailers have bought, and it should be made up of surplus food or stuff that they were throwing away instead of donating it to a charity, and then their staff having to use that charity. It just didn't make any sense. I was encouraging the retailers to do something at the source. And also the language around it has changed. So when I first started, we'd turn up somewhere and people would apologize to me for not having waste. So Nando's and KFC are the best example. I used to turn up all the time to these places, and the managers would apologize. I used to know them all personally. They'd be like, "Oh, really sorry, we haven't got any for you today." And I was like, "That's a good thing. It's a good thing that you haven't got any waste. Like, stop apologizing. Like, I don't want to come here and take all your waste. I want you to reduce how much you're wasting so that I don't have to come here." And it took them years to get it into their heads that I actually didn't want to be there, which was obviously very different to how maybe the food bank models had come about, because they were always like asking for donations and needing food to feed people. We were like, we don't want to see any of this stuff ever. And now people are understanding that more. So now we turn up places and they'll be like, "Oh, we haven't got anything today. How good is that?" And completely change the language behind it. And we're like, "Well, you could have bloody told us before we turned up so we didn't waste the trip." But so now the emphasis is on us to kind of get more efficient with our kind of processes. So yeah, there are some things that have changed, but Jack, without being like all doom and gloom, the problem's got worse. The amount of food that we're producing is more than ever before. The amount of food that we produce that doesn't get fed to humans, so goes to livestock and biofuels, is bigger than ever before. The amount of land that we're needing to grow this food is larger than ever before, which obviously causes deforestation and the increase of land use for livestock. And then what comes with that is also a major issue. So as you can see behind me, everything's wrapped in plastic. Now, I did a conference recently with a lady in Texas, and she was part of something called plastic pollution, I think it was called. And she did a speech after my speech and said that in 2022, we've now created more single-use plastic than any other year on record, despite the fact that we all understand and know about the damaging of single-use plastic. So beer can rings, straws, cutlery, anything that was made out of plastic, single-use plastic previously, had stopped, and we've got more sustainable processes and products being created. But single-use plastic as a product is now being created on a larger scale than ever before. And it's because we're having to ship more food around than ever before, products around than ever before. And so that creates huge environmental problems as well. And then obviously the amount of food that's being accessed is less than ever before in a very strange way, because we've got such a fast growing population that the percentage of people that get access to food is getting less and less, despite the fact that more and more people are getting access to it. So if you think of things like third world countries, war-torn countries, Asia, Africa, that kind of places, there's a lot more in terms of wealth, so a lot more accessibility of food at the top level, but a lot less at the bottom level where there's a larger volume of people, and that's the disparity, and that's where the issues are as well. So there's just huge, massive problems with production, overproduction, transport, logistics, and then waste management. And then in the middle of all of that is a few people trying to get access to a few bits of food. And so you can see all the positive things that are happening around the world, especially when it comes to recycle and reuse, and obviously amazing people like yourselves who try their best to try and do things which are making people think differently, and putting a lot of effort into stopping people from doing things a certain way that they've always done before, to try to get them conscious of their impact, but also to come up with processes which are more efficient and sustainable. I get that. But alongside that, there is an industry of people still continuing in the old ways on a bigger scale than we've ever seen. And it's those people we need to get to as quickly as possible, to get them to understand that they just can't keep doing this. You can't keep cutting trees down and raising animals, putting them in plastic, shipping them across the world, and then putting them into landfill. It's not even that we're eating this animal protein, we're just raising it, killing it, and not eating it. That's the problem. So the bit that we actually do eat, I think those are the figures that you're referring to, Ellie. So the World Food Programme says that 30% of all the food that we actually create is eaten, but it's the food that is accessible, not the food that we grow for livestock feed or for biofuels, or the food that is wasted, which doesn't even make it out of the system onto our plates or into the shops. So that figure that you're talking about is still a tiny percentage of what's actually grown and available out there. And it sounds like it's all doom and gloom, and it kind of is, because we're on a very kind of short thread here when it comes to how long we've got before things start to become irreversible. And if you watch Frozen Planet 2, you know, the last episode of David Attenborough, and watch some of the things that are happening, you're kind of going, have we really got as much time as what they're telling us? Because it's quite harrowing.
How long do we have? What is the...
Well, it's the percent. It depends on what you're referring to. So if you're talking about global temperature rises, you know, they're saying 1.5 degrees is the point of where we might not be able to start growing certain crops, or where sea level rises are going to start increasing, etc. And then there's a 3-degree one, and there's a further degree one, and they're saying like 25 to 50 years to reach those. But if you listen to what they said on Frozen Planet 2, you know, they were talking about some of the ice shelves melting within 1,000 years, and now they're saying it could melt in 100 years. And one of the ice shelves in the Greenland area they were talking about it would raise sea levels by 7 meters if it all melted within the next 100 years. Like, that's a game changer. That's just one ice shelf. Like, so you're watching it going, what are they really telling us? How tight is this timeline? How bad are things?
I guess the scary thing is that
they
don't really know, isn't it? That's the scary
thing. I
think
that's the problem, isn't it?
I think recently the UN have said that it's very unlikely that we're going to keep below 1.5 degrees. So I think the challenge is to just stay as low as possible, even though we are obviously increasing it. And I think I read somewhere that some countries, I don't quote me on this, I can't remember where they are, but because of obviously temperatures increasing and droughts happening, there are countries that are relying on melted ice for their water sources. So they're going down into their rivers, and they're actually relying on that more. So it's incredible how everything is so, you know, intertwined and related. And that's the scary thing. Like I think as humans, we think we're kind of the center of the world and we're not at all. We're just, the world will carry on, but you know, whether we're...
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Mother Nature will carry on. She'll find a balance somewhere, and it might mean that a certain percentage of the population doesn't make it because of lots of different reasons, but she will find a balance if we keep doing the things. I mean, it's called Anthropocene, isn't it? I think my TED talk was based on the age of the age in time where we were doing more negative to the planet than we were doing positive, so taking more than what we're actually giving back to the planet. I think that started around the 1920s, 1930s. And when they set up these timelines, it was based on production and destruction at that time. But when we got to like the 90s, when it was like TV dinners and the digital age started and all that kind of stuff, instant kind of, you know, communication, instant food, everything was instant from the 90s. The timelines narrowed down, and we were told to start adapting to changes. So we could adapt to sea level rises, we could adapt to changes of weather, crop rotation, all the stuff that affects us globally. But what they're saying now is that those changes are happening so fast, we haven't even got time to adapt. And you can argue with people all you want about climate change, and there's climate change deniers, and there's people that obviously preach about it, and I understand, but you just have to look outside your window. And this year, look at all the things that happened to us. They're talking like Doncaster might disappear because of flooding in the middle of the UK. It's absolutely bonkers. And then you saw rising temperature levels and record heat. in this country, which affected trees and insects, and everything that went on in this country was affected. Birds, fish, everything was affected by it. And it happened really quickly. And it's like November now, and it's like warm outside, and it's,
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
been, I think it was
it's
21 degrees in London the other day, and we are filming this at the start of November, so
we haven't got time to
that's
adapt.
yeah.
And when we talk about sustainability and we talk about climate change, I get really frustrated with people that try to come up with innovation and new things to try and tackle it. Whereas I believe we should be doing less, like less traveling in cars, less purchasing, less, globalization of logistics and supply chain, a lot less of that stuff. That would have a positive impact, because all you have to do is look at what happened in COVID in April 20, when we literally all stopped and all the global heat maps just went back to the normal temperature. There were places in China which were like over the record levels of like smog and air pollution and heat temperature on the maps. And it just went back down to a normal level within like 2 weeks. That's all it took. So why can't we just have like a bit of a reset now and again? Or why can't we just stop for a little bit and just have a pause and all go out for a walk in the park like we did when it was COVID? And do that and do less of stuff, rather than thinking that we've got to keep creating and making more of stuff to try and offset all the stuff that we're doing that we're damaging the planet with. It doesn't make any sense. It's you can't counteract climate change with capitalism, because you need infinite growth and infinite production, and that's not gonna solve the problems that we have. And everything is affected by food. Everything, in some way, shape, or form, it's affected by how we grow food, how we transport food, and how we actually access it, and then what we do with it at the end. This entire world is set up to deal with that. And we need to eat to live, obviously, so everybody needs to eat to live. So we're all surrounded by it. And for some reason, we have this incredibly stupid system that doesn't work. And nobody is brave enough to go, we need to do things a bit different, or at least stop doing it that way, and let's look at a different way. They just want to carry on the same way, but try and do it in a sustainable way, or create different types of packaging, or, grow food a bit differently, like in vertical gardens in Holland, for example. It's like, but you're still creating more food than we can consume, and shipping it across the world the same way as you're doing with the other foods. So it's,
I think there's a great opportunity in the waste industry. Obviously that's what we do with kind of packaging, but I guess you're doing that in a similar way with food. I mean, it's not food, it's not waste, and it shouldn't be, but people are obviously treating it like waste. And I think we have a global waste crisis, and you're doing something about the food waste crisis, which is incredible. I mean, can you talk us through what you actually do? Because I feel like we haven't really covered that.
I think you've already seen it, you guys. We collect food from all over. So we call it interception. So interception is the point of where it was going to waste. So we don't take donations of food. We're not a food bank. We're not a charity that basically needs the food. We just stop food from going to waste. So everything that you see on our social media and behind me isn't anything that we ask for. It's stuff that we've intercepted. Food then comes in, volunteers, amazing volunteers that collect it, or we get deliveries in big lorries. And then we process all that food. So we weigh it all, record it all, and then we quality control it, and then we stock take it. So behind me is some stock that's being stock taked, and that's going to the refugee community kitchen in Calais today. I think that's going. So once it's in this fashion, which is that, in like a crate, it means it's been quality controlled. And then that's the point where we make a decision on what to do with it. So we run a surplus supermarket where people can buy one of those boxes for £10, and you can fill it up with as much food as you want. We also do half boxes at £5, and then we do like zero waste sections where you can bring your own container in and we'll fill it up for you, and you can whack it in your box. The bigger sacks of stuff, all this stuff that's like too big to go in those boxes, we'll decant it and put it in our zero waste, or we'll pass it on to other charities. And we also do outside catering. So I've done 11 surplus weddings this year across the UK.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you're something that is actually traditionally quite wasteful and a very expensive thing. You're actually bringing, surplus food into it. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, so, and it's the education part for me, because the demographic of people that go to weddings wouldn't necessarily need to use food banks, or potentially wouldn't ever associate themselves with projects like ours for lots of different reasons. And they may only come across us through like volunteering days at workplaces where they've kind of been asked to come and volunteer somewhere. Whereas I was trying to get across to them that, I mean, most of the weddings that I've done this year, I've done a speech at the end of the meal. and told them all they've all eaten surplus food to kind of shock them all, because if I told them beforehand, they'd all be like preconceptions.
Yeah.
So I tell them afterwards, and then I go, yeah, you know, all that chicken that you just had all came from Nando's, or all that fruit and vegetable came from the local wholesalers, and it was all getting wasted. And I explained to them all why it exists on their plate. I think the biggest shock is like the variety and the quality of the food that they cook. So a lot of the sacks behind me are made up of, like, one of those is just crushed chilies. I've got one that's just oregano. I've got extra virgin olive oil in them tubs behind me. I've got apple cider vinegar. And when they see these type of ingredients on the menu, or they've eaten them, they're kind of like thinking back and going, how on earth did he manage to get fish on the menu? Or how did he manage to get, you know, walnuts in my salad? You know, and they're going, how was that going in the bin? And then they start to think, going,
Yeah.
this isn't right. What on earth? And then I can start to educate them and empower them to go, you're part of this problem. You know, how you choose to buy food and the impact of that has a big issue on what we receive, but also on the planet as well, not just locally, but, you know, globally. And that's when I think I can deliver my message more kind of efficiently to them. Whereas people that come here to use the supermarket either know about us and want to support us, or they may potentially need to use us. And obviously there's no stigma attached, you know, anybody can come. But we have had a few people that come in and will just say, look, I'm really sorry, I can't afford to do this, but can you help me out? And obviously we always would, we'd never turn anybody away. But then we get a lot of like left-wing environmentalists, people who we're preaching to the converted. We don't need to tell them about food waste or environmental issues. They know what they're doing. They know why they're here. So it's the demographics that wouldn't necessarily associate with projects like, you know, ours and yours, or understand why we're doing it. Catering for me is the greatest way of getting across to them, feeding them, and then saying to them, you do realize you've just eaten food that would have gone in the bin. And probably part of your world contributes to this. So it might be how you align politically. It might be about how you purchase products. It might be what you do as a business for work. Contribute to the reasons why I've just been able to give you this food on this plate.
Yeah.
And that's when the shock value comes into it, and that's when we can start potentially inspiring people to think differently.
I guess one thing what people are encouraged to do from an environmental perspective is eat less meat and dairy. How do you feel about vegetarianism or veganism? Because I guess what you're working with, you know, the food is there, isn't it? So I guess it's got to be used. Do you think people should still cut down on meat or dairy, or
yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. Yeah, you know, fundamentally, yes, everyone should eat less. It depends on what angle you're coming from, Ellie. So I'm plant-based, and I don't purchase any food that isn't vegan. However, there is a term called freeganism, where people would put their personal beliefs to one side for the bigger picture. So I know people who are vegetarian and vegan that would eat meat or fish if it was going to waste.
Yeah.
Because it would contribute to that kind of capitalist model to encourage it more. Yeah. And by doing so, that transfer of energy is more productive by consuming it than it is to waste it.
Yeah, because it just seems insane, doesn't it, to throw it away rather than be like, oh, I can't eat meat, put it in the bin.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of, it's kind of counterproductive to what you're trying to achieve. You know, if you look at it from a black and white perspective, that animal is already dead. It's already in a piece of plastic. It's already been sold and potentially been wasted. There's nothing you can do about it. So, you know, a lot of people I know that are freegans or bin divers, and you know, people that kind of do a lot of the freegan. It's not just food; they do it with furniture and anything that's getting thrown away. You know, I know people that have completely decorated their houses out of stuff that's getting thrown away. You know, it's about the bigger picture, and there's only few and far between people like that. But when it comes to waste, the biggest problem we've got is that no matter what you create as a product, whether you create the most sustainable product out of unicorns' eyelashes, like, you know, it could be anything. You still have to put your product into that system. Yeah. So animal protein gets dealt with exactly the same way as plant-based protein. It's not like they have a special process of dealing with sustainable, ethical, vegan products than they do with the animal products. It's all just gets treated the same. So if it goes past best before, it's discarded. If it's got an issue with the packaging, it's discarded. If there's too much of it, it gets discarded. So we've got mountains and mountains of plant-based products here, from plant-based milks to all sorts of like gluten-free and vegan products, dry products that are specifically plant-based, specifically aimed at a market that are kind of left, kind of environmental or flexible diets as well. Those people that are quite trying to transition away from animal protein. And they're sat here next to all the Nando's and KFC chicken and all the high sugar drinks and all the bread products, because they're all part of the same system. But the problem for me when I speak to people about waste isn't that we should be bashing people about what they eat, even though I do believe obviously people should be eating less meat and fish, you know, and I do live by that as well. My whole family and my children are all completely plant-based, because I believe from an environmental perspective and a health perspective that it's better for them to do that. And I'm also a chef, so I can make sure that they get all the nutrition and stuff into their diets if they were to lose out from not eating the animal protein. But the problem is that if we focused on what was being wasted as a whole, whether it was plant-based or animal protein, then it would have a bigger impact than telling people to eat less meat. Because telling people to eat less meat does two things. One, it polarizes people. And secondly, there's a lot of people that don't know what to do instead. Where to get the vitamins and nutrition from, because they're eating less meat, etc., eggs, dairy. So it creates educational issues and it creates massive polarization, because you get the right-wing extremists who are pro-meat versus the left-wing extremists who are gluing themselves to buildings and cars and letting tires down. And it just creates a huge polarization. There's like people like us in the middle trying to just live our lives normally and then dealing with this problem. And so when people come here, especially if people coming on tours or coming to visit us or from kind of corporate worlds where we're doing volunteering, I try to get them to think really, really differently about their impact. So there's the argument of, is eating animal protein that's being raised around the corner better for the planet than eating pea protein, which is being shipped in from other countries across the world and put into packaging which isn't recyclable? And so there's this argument about it, but it just depends on what
I guess you've got to remember though that the feed for the animal was probably shipped in abroad.
Yes,
so it's much more complicated than
and then you've got to think about the thing that we've discussed is a lot of the food that's grown, 6,000 calories per person per day. A lot of that food doesn't even make it to human beings because it's being fed to that livestock, which is also part of the deforestation and all part of the kind of global supply chain. So yeah, that's what you've got to take into consideration. Now, yeah, I preach and practice veganism and plant-based diets. I don't necessarily believe that all plant-based products are sustainable or healthy. There's a lot of ingredients in some of these products which I wouldn't want to consume because they've got to add replacers and stabilizers and all these things that go into products. And also they've all got plastic packaging, or you know, they're similar to this where it's come in plastic packaging, even though there's some that are not. And then you've got the waste element of it as well that I deal with. So I obviously eat a plant-based diet, but a lot of my plant-based foods come from waste. And I don't know if I would be able to afford or even purchase a lot of the plant-based products, because I just think they're too inaccessible to kind of everyday person who maybe wants to try these things. They're just really, really expensive, and that's because of the value of the resources that goes into creating them, and I get all that completely. So you can't just tell people to go vegan or to eat less meat, because unfortunately we live in a world where it costs 99p to get a burger, or you're telling somebody to go buy some tofu for £4 or £5 a pack. You know, it's not realistic, even though I champion it and think that we should be doing that more of. There's a lot in terms of grassroots education that needs to go into teaching people about eating plant-based foods, but then you've got to think about the accessibility to them as well. So it's really complex, and it's just not a simple answer of saying we should all eat less meat. Because yes, we should all be eating less meat and killing less animals and less deforestation. But a global society of 6-7 billion people, you can't realistically tell them to do that. And another big problem is what I was kind of related to it earlier, is that the accessibility to animal protein in some of the poorer and war-torn countries is greater than ever before. So parts of Asia and Africa, I know places like in Nigeria and Gambia, where especially those that have money are getting more and more access to animal protein than ever before. And it's seen as like a luxury thing that those that have kind of, you grow up to eat meat because you don't eat it as a child. You get more plant-based foods as a child. And if you get older, in some places where I've been, and some people that I speak to, like Senegal and Gambia and Ghana, they say that the older you get, the better your job, the more you can afford to eat meat. And that's what people kind of like try to aspire to. So the accessibility to it is greater than before, whereas maybe, I don't know, even like 20, 25 years ago, that wouldn't have been there. That supply chain to get access to that product wouldn't have been there, whereas it is now more than ever before. Whereas their staple diets were much more plant-based and much more healthier and better for the planet. So there's this kind of irony now where a lot of the kind of developing countries are getting access to more unsustainable foods because it's seen as something that should be happening within the kind of the status, which is also going to really damage, the planet much more, because we should be eating more diets similar to what they were eating in kind of Western countries, and we're not. So it's really, really hard, Ella, because it's the food system is so complex.
Yeah.
Even though it's just a simple thing of growing food, putting it on a plate and feeding it to somebody, the entire supply chain has made it so complex.
Yeah.
And it's so difficult to come up with solutions that will tackle a lot of the problems.
I think it's just so broken, isn't it?
Everything's
so broken and backwards.
It works very well for those that benefit from it. So
yeah.
A lot of people and companies make a lot of profit from food despite having waste. I mean, imagine if I said to you as a business, 10% every year of everything that you do is going to be wasted. As a business and as individuals. I don't know how many people or businesses on the planet can afford to do that. Yet retailers can afford to write off 10% every year and still make obscene profits. So the system works well in that sense, but it doesn't work well from an environmental perspective. It certainly doesn't work well from a social perspective, because how on earth have we got people going without food, and the rise of food banks in a world where we have more supermarkets than ever before? It doesn't make any sense. It's not that it works well, it works as a paradox. I think the food system is a paradox. We have access to food banks, overproduction, hunger, malnutrition, and obesity. Like in Leeds, on each other's doorstep, or in Manchester, or like everywhere you go in the country now, I meet somebody go, "Oh, we've got the worst cases of poverty." It's like, you haven't, because I've literally just been round down the road and they said they've got the worst cases, like right next door to a supermarket. So it's a paradox, and because it's a paradox, you can't solve it, because it's constantly kind of like working against itself, but then working for those that benefit from it. And that's the problem with the food system.
Yeah, I guess because obviously recently with the cost of living crisis, these things have definitely got a lot worse. We're hearing more about on the news, families not being able to buy enough food. You mentioned that obviously some people can go to you and they can just pay as they feel. They don't have to necessarily pay for it. I mean, how do you feel about things like school children? Do you think they should get free school meals and things like that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, giving children free school meals, though, seems to be kind of sticky plaster approach to dealing with some kind of fundamental root causes. So why not teach children how to cook and grow food with children, and show them, so that when they go home they can grow food and cook for themselves and cook for their families, bring back this whole kind of food education, rather than just giving children free school meals because the parents who are not being paid a living wage can't afford to pay for school meals. Like we budget, it's like 60 something pence for children, and yet we budget over £1 for prisoners. So politically, we've made a decision to feed prisoners better and more than we do our own children. So feeding children free school meals is great, but it's a headline in a newspaper. That's what they want. Whereas the fundamental root causes are, why don't we educate people about food? Why don't we tell them where it comes from, what goes in our bodies, the impact of their purchases, the types of food they should be eating more of, encourage them about nutrition, encourage them about sustainability, seasonality. We don't teach them that. We just give them a plate of food and for free and think that's going to solve the problems. So even though I do champion it, because unfortunately we live in a world where children are going hungry or having one meal a day, some children don't even have a meal a day, they're snacking, then yes, absolutely, children should not be having to pay for food, especially when so much of it goes to waste, especially when so much fruit and veg goes to waste. But if we're going to solve the problem, then we need to bring back food technology in schools, in primary schools. We need to bring back the kind of post-war, post-Second World War generation of dig for victory and grow your own and making jams and, not having dates on food. We need to bring that generation to this kind of the new generation, the digital generation, bridge the two together and show people exactly what it is that is happening with food. Because unfortunately now we have people that are sat at home on a phone and they can press a button and food arrives at their door, whether it's from a supermarket or from a takeaway, and they have no relationship at all with what is happening. And they're probably spending a lot more money than they realize, because they could go down and buy a tin of chickpeas and a tin of tomatoes and some vegetables and make a meal for a family of four for like, a couple of quid. But that's the reality of the situation, is that we're so far removed from food that it's easy to manipulate people into thinking that this is the best option, and it's very dangerous. And it's very dangerous in a world when we're talking about ice caps melting and rising sea levels and rising temperatures, and the way that animals are behaving around the world as well. I do a lot of work on I work with a lot of people who are doing a lot of research on this, around the way that whales and sharks are migrating and where they're feeding and where they're giving birth, around fish coming from the sky and reptiles and lizards and how they're behaving, and lack of insects. I live in Scarborough, drive up and down the A64 in the summer, and your windscreen is completely covered in insects. In the last couple of years, we've had nothing. Literally clean winds, and it sounds silly, but it's having huge fundamental issues with our kind of environment. And when a person can sit there on a phone and press a button and order food and have no relationship to their food, or understand that the farmers in the field are spraying their crops with so much crap that the insects can't even survive there anymore, and this is what's going on your food, which then goes into a takeaway or goes into a retailer, and that's what you're buying. They have no understanding of that relationship. And I just feel like it's a very dangerous world that we can end up living in if we continue down this route. And I don't see us turning back. And I deal with people on a global level, and I just haven't seen any evidence of anybody going, we're going to do less of something, or we're going to turn back on something, or educate, or we're going to show people a different way. I just see pockets of individuals and people who are frustrated that not enough is being done and trying to do something themselves, and a lack of joined up effort in dealing with things on a bigger scale. And like I keep saying, food is pivotal to a lot of that. And it starts right at grassroots education in my eyes.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if you can educate children as well, if we invest in that more, you're more likely to inspire people to try and challenge the system as well. I think,
but they are the purchasers. They can decide to purchase a tin of chickpeas rather than a pizza, for 30 quid being delivered to you. But there's no education; they don't understand. So why would they choose anything different if they don't know? So it's not saying to people that you have to go out and change the planet. It's giving them education so they can make informed decisions around their impacts. And people are not making informed decisions at the moment. They're just being manipulated into thinking and acting a certain way. And apps and technology are a part and parcel of that. I went into a school in Leeds a couple of years ago with some windfall apples. And I didn't think I had to explain to these kids what windfall apples is. But anyway, I did, and said, look, they're falling off a tree. We've gone and collected them, and we've put them in this crate, and you can eat them. They're absolutely fine, but they've just gone off this tree. And this one kid who was 8 years old, he was called Callum. He turned around and said to me, I didn't know that apples came off trees. I thought they came out of plastic bags. He was 8. And for me, that epitomised everything that is going wrong in this world. Is that
I think it shows a huge education system problem as well, because what are we teaching children in schools as well?
But why don't they want children to know that apples come off trees? Or why don't they want people to know that it's safe to pick an apple off a tree and eat it?
So last year, I think it was last year, we came over and we helped you with your community garden. Do you think community gardens are a way forward to kind of get people together and, start planting their own fruit and veg?
And community gardens are great initiatives. I don't think there's enough of them. And, like we just talked about then about grassroots education and relationships to food, for me, that is the greatest form of activism, is growing your own food, and will have the greatest impact on our planet is to grow your own food. It's as simple as that. We can't all do that, and I know you came and volunteered, and obviously we're entirely grateful for all your hard work and everything that you did. And it was quite a fun day, really crazy day actually. I remember it was really busy in the car park, and that drone that you're filming us, it was mental busy. But You can't always do that. You can't always travel to Leeds and come and help us in community gardens, and people who want to get involved can't always do because we've got busy lifestyles, etc. But I believe there's a really good project in Leeds called, I think it's called Back to Front, and I'll have to look it up. But there's people who don't use their gardens, and this project uses their gardens to kind of, it's monoculture, which obviously is the most environmentally way of growing things. Permaculture would be more environmentally friendly, but basically grow one product in your garden and then they swap it with other people who are growing one product in their garden. So you might grow potatoes and then somebody down the road might grow beetroot, and then you would swap between you, and you'd have this like kind of unofficial kind of cooperative between you to kind of share and communicate with each other about the food that you've grown.
That's nice.
I actually think that's a really, really cool way of doing things because it breaks down a lot of barriers in communities. It allows you to know your neighbour, look out for each other, and obviously got that relationship with food as well. And there's no greater impact than eating food that's been grown in your back garden. So
sounds so more human somehow. That kind of relationship.
Yeah, there's more social benefits as well, I guess, isn't there?
Absolutely, yeah. Even if you don't care about the food, it's the fact that you're communicating and you're not isolated and you're supporting one another and you're sharing and being kind and all the other traits that we've lost as human beings, especially because of the political world and COVID. We've lost a lot of that. I just think that's a really beautiful way of reconnecting with people and reconnecting with food and having very, very little impact in order to have a big impact in lots of other ways. And so, I champion those things. I think they're all fantastic initiatives. I just wish there were more of them, and I wish there would be less green grass space in towns and cities and more growing food initiatives and handing it over to local community groups and communities to be able to grow food more.
Yeah, definitely. I think they should also ban plastic grass as well because it's just horrible.
It's the dumbest invention I've ever seen.
Just disgusting. Really,
it's like grass, and it's just, what are you doing, guys? Like,
yeah.
So you've done something amazing with your life so far, but we wanted to sort of maybe hear about kind of the challenges that you've had to overcome.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the hardest thing is it's so hard for people to do what you're doing in our society. There's so many challenges. So we're keen to get your thoughts on what the challenges were and also like what could we be doing differently to help other people do this?
I guess I was diagnosed as neurodivergent like 2 years ago. I went through a lot of trauma therapy, and I guess a lot of people said to me, you'd have to be absolutely bonkers to do this. And I was always called mad as a kid or weird as a kid. I didn't know I was like autistic until like 2 years ago. And I feel like a lot of my neurodivergent traits and qualities that I have allowed me to do this stuff. Probably in not necessarily better ways, but different ways to what maybe somebody who isn't neurodivergent would have done it. I've had to learn the very hard way of how to communicate. At one point, I was doing it myself. So especially from the HR perspective, if somebody came up to me and went, I'm leaving, I'd be like, okay, then bye. And they'd be like, well, you're not going to ask why? I was like, I don't need to know why. Do I? Like, if you want to leave, you leave. Like, I'm not going to stop you. And then I hired people in HR to come and do the job for us, which you may have met when you came to the Real Jumping Project, Becky and Ian. And I literally met with them probably every other day just to discuss the things that I couldn't say or do, because that's not how you deal with people, especially in a business perspective, especially the fact that I was, in a position of leadership. And so I had to learn that way. And now I don't have anybody in HR in the surplus to purpose. I have support from my directors, but I've taken all the things that I've learned how not to do it and how to do it, and I've put them into surplus to purpose. And what I've learned, especially from a leadership position, is I'm not perfect at everything, and there are people better than me at doing these roles, and therefore I try to empower people who are better than me into those positions to support me, rather than feeling like I have to be in charge and micromanage. Micromanaging doesn't come from an egotistical point of view. It comes from the fact that I've got autism and I need to understand and know everything that's going on. And the greatest bit of advice I ever had was I need to let go more, which is kind of ironic when you're in a position of leadership, because you feel like you should be doing more of things and in control of things more. But I literally had to stand back and let go and give people opportunities to stand up and do their jobs. And that was the hardest thing for me, because in the very early days, all the attention was around me. I was voted one of the most influential men in the world in whatever year it was, back in the days where all the attention was on me. But then I didn't realize that I couldn't manage all this attention if I was in the van collecting food or sweeping the floor or in the kitchen cooking. I couldn't do everything, but I tried. I really did try. So even though I was capable of doing all these tasks and kind of completing things, I realized that it wasn't about me, and the organization wasn't about me. And if I was to stop, then the organization would stop. And that's what I had to learn, is that if I have a day off or a week off, which I've had a couple of weeks off in the last couple of months, I've come back to work and the place looks the same. Everybody's fine, because I put a lot of effort into processes and people to make sure that they could do those jobs. So the challenges for me have been kind of really close to heart and internal. And they've had a massive impact on how the organization looks across the world. Like, I was managing 126 projects in 7 countries, communicating with people all over the world at any time of day, setting up projects, giving them access to information, building documents. You know, if you say to me now, just build me a document with 500 words, I can just do it like that, really easy. You know, I get people from university coming to me saying, can you just write a document for me in 30 minutes, or like an essay or something, and I can just do it. Give me any topic and I can just do it. Like, I'm just capable of doing that stuff. And this is what I was doing for all these projects. Like, oh, don't worry, in South Korea, I'll write to the government for you and we'll get permission to do this project. And I was doing that. And then I was helping them set up all their processes and then putting a lot of effort into their work. And then I did it with Israel, I did it with Berlin, I did it with France, and then, you know, the projects that kind of we were supporting and coordinating. And then it just got to a point where it was like I was sacrificing my family. So relationships that I had was being sacrificed. My children, so my son's nearly 9. I don't really remember spending much time with him in the early days. I've got a 3-year-old daughter now, and I spend a lot more time at home with her, and I've seen the benefits of working less and being around my children a lot more. But then my communications were working on myself more and realizing that I still needed therapy, I still needed support, I still needed to work on myself and be the best version I could ever be. And it wasn't going to be that there was an end result. It was a continuous thing that I always had to do. So step back, learn from mistakes, communicate better, apologize, and also as well to inform people that I was neurodivergent. So that's one of the things I do a lot, where I'll say to people, I'm really sorry, you know, I have autism. Sometimes I interpret things a bit differently, and if I've done something to offend, I apologize. But you give me a set of instructions and say, this is what you meant to say to somebody or do to somebody, I can follow it all day long. But if I have to interpret it or kind of read somebody's face or understand the tone of something, I just can't do that. So yeah, I just had to go away and learn and keep working on it. And I do that every single day, and I still mess up and make mistakes, and people still message me going, that didn't come across the way that it might have sounded in your head, Adam. On that big group message you just sent out at 4 o'clock this morning on the WhatsApp group with 100 people in it. I was like, oh really, why? Because what did it come across? And they're like, really offensive or really inappropriate. I was like, really? It's like, it's not how it sounded. So I still make those mistakes, but you know, I've learned, and I just allow myself to be vulnerable. I think that's one of the, you know, the best things about being a leader is, before this, I thought I was invincible, and I thought, you know, I could feed the world and nothing could touch me. But then I realized actually I'm just like everybody else, in the sense that, you know, I have trauma and problems and issues, and as we all do, and that I am vulnerable just like everybody else. But it's okay to be vulnerable, and it's okay to be a person in leadership to be vulnerable. You know, we shouldn't have to be sacrificing ourselves and our lives to try and be the best as we can, because that's not what it's about. And I've realized now a lot of people that are in those positions are not doing too well, from a relationship perspective or from a personal perspective or a health perspective. A lot of these people now growing up and seeing these people in these positions that I used to look up to as a kid, of realizing that's just not where I want to be. You know, I want to be at home with my children more. I want to be inspiring people more. I want to give people opportunities more. I don't want to be at the front taking all the credit and all the glory and sacrificing everything and time and quality time with people just to be a figurehead within society or within the public that really doesn't mean anything. You know, the things that you read out earlier, Jack, you know, I appreciate it, and I do, and I'm really grateful for a lot of it, but it doesn't really mean anything. It's quite fickle. Somebody could just create a headline now and say Adam's the most influential man in the world just now, and it'll be on an article, and that's it. People just somehow think it's, you know, the gospel and doesn't mean anything. So whereas before I used to really, really kind of latch onto those things, got this amazing, look at all this like stuff, this attention and TED Talks and filming with Jamie Oliver and being on CNN News, or I was being prosecuted by trading standards. I was on the BBC One show and I was just loving it. I was laughing it all up. But a lot of it was just my ego, really, just kind of saying it was about me. Whereas now I just say no to people. If media come and say, can we film with you? I was like, I'm not interested, because I'd rather feed a lot of people, you know, in Leeds than be on TV talking about feeding people in Leeds. That's the difference. And I think you only learn that stuff. You can read as many books as you want. You can follow Stephen Bartlett online and do everything he does, but you can't achieve it or be that person unless you actually go through it. And nobody's perfect when they start. And even those that are good and nice and decent human beings when they start still get things wrong. And I think that's something that we have to give a lot of credit for and champion more, is that you need to go away and learn how to do these things and make your own mistakes and learn from those mistakes in order to get better, rather than just trying to be the perfect example of yourself from day one and thinking that everything's going to be peaches and cream the whole way through.
Yeah,
I noticed you laughed at Stephen Bartlett.
Jack's a big fan, actually.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, it sounds like you're incredibly self-aware, and you've obviously done a lot of work on yourself. And I think everybody needs to do that. I think that's incredible. I think so many people don't even realize that. I guess possibly people in leadership are more into that, but generally most people, the average person, probably doesn't even think about that kind of thing. So I think
it's the same thing. I think people, especially people in leadership, you get on this kind of freight train which is just pushing you more and more and more about more growth, more business, more money, more customers, you know, more media appearances, and you just lose track from what's important, which is everything you just said, Adam. Really, it's being human and living your life. And
but you see it now. I see it really quickly in like celebrities or sports stars. You know, when you see them on TV or you read stuff about them or you watch their behaviors, you're like, I can either see that they're struggling behind the scenes or they're sacrificing things in order to be there. So somebody that I champion a lot is Lewis Hamilton. You know, I think he's a great ambassador for an elitist. You know, somebody who is on a different world to us. We'll never be able to probably understand. I mean, you might, Jack, but I probably will never experience anything like that. But I think he handles himself so well, especially a man who isn't white and who is different in terms of his culture, his beliefs. You know, I think he's plant-based or vegan now, and he does speak out about that a lot, and he does it in a way that he gets a lot of negative pressure. And I think he handles it so well. He's a champion, you know, a world champion. And I just feel like even though we're not at the same level, there's a lot of things that are very relative to people who are in those similar positions of leadership or founders or CEOs. Those type of positions are very, very, very similar in terms of demands and pressures. And for me, you know, he's a great example of it. You know, I think it's fantastic. But then you see other people who are like, you know, even people like Alan Sugars of the world, you know, people at the top of their level in terms of what they do, inspire millions of people. But then you look into their lives and their politics and their relationships, and you see some of the things that go on, and you think a lot of this is because of the sacrifices you've had to make in order to get to where you are. And I just think there's a lot of people that are unaware of that and think you can go from reading a book to Alan Sugar and, you know, become a billionaire overnight because you've followed what he's done. But then people don't realize that path can take you down some really, really dark and deep places that you didn't realize you would ever go down, because that stuff's not talked about in media or in books enough, you know. And I'm sure there's times, Jack, you know, where you've probably sat in a room or in your office or in your chair and you're going, why am I doing this? Like, this is nuts. Or, you know what I mean? I'm sure, because we all do it, but no one talks about doing that. And we all think it's just, you know, a road that's glorified. And those that make sacrifices have to make some serious sacrifices where you might not spend time with your family. You might not get to have a family. You might lose relationships because you're doing so much to try and drive yourself to a certain position. And I just think that self-awareness that you mentioned, Ellie, is like taking me down a path where it's like, what is really important and what do I want? And I live on the beach with my daughter. She's 3 years old, and I spend every other day at work and then every other day at home. And like yesterday, I took her to a play barn in York, and we went out for the beach for the morning. And it's just really, really precious time that you can't get back. And for me, that's worth more than going on TV with Hugh Fearn-Waitstall or Jamie Oliver, which is stuff that I've done in the past, because I just feel like, does it really matter? And is it where I want to be? Because I'll still come back to work and be a CEO, and I can still go on TV and be a leader. I can still inspire people, but I just have to choose on where I dedicate my time and my energy.
Do you find that difficult? Because obviously what you're doing is pretty incredible, and so how do you find that balance of being at home with your children and leading this?
You have to consciously let go. And like I said, it's the greatest piece of advice I had was, do I have to answer my phone? Do I have to have all the social media platforms on my phone, looking at every notification? Do I have to take every call? Do I have to be at work every day? I've built, or we have built, the team have built with me a system and a process where anybody can walk in and be inducted and follow that process. So therefore, if that works, it doesn't need me to be here to show everybody how to do it all the time. And we've got volunteers here today who are showing some work placement volunteers from a company in Leeds, and they're showing them our processes because we put all that effort into creating them in order to be able to show others how to do it. So if you believe in that as much as I believe in it, it makes it easier for you. But there's a lot of effort that you have to put in to get it to that way. And I just chose to put my energy into that more and choose not to be on TV or not to be on the radio and all the other things that I just constantly get in my inbox. It was like, I need to do the fire risk assessment for the building, not be on the BBC News because they want to talk about bloody food waste or poverty. And because of that, I can now have time off, which then means if they do ring me, I can take a phone call at home or Zoom at home and do the interviews and the media stuff better now than I could have done then, because I'd have just been worried and panicking about the fact that I've not done, the induction process or whatever it is for the business, and the business just falls over them because you've not laid the foundation. So it's just focusing, Ellie, and saying, what do I prioritize more? The longevity and the sustainability of the project and the empowerment of people to be able to get involved in this, or do I care about me being on TV and my ego and everybody knowing about what I do? And I went down the other path, and it just wasn't a very nice world. I film with celebrities. I've done a lot of big TV, and I've seen things that I wasn't very comfortable with, and I've met people who were my idols that are no longer my idols because I found out things about them which I can't repeat. And so it was really difficult, and I just thought, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? It doesn't mean anything. Except for maybe 10 years time, you might bring it up and say somebody's influential man in the world. But it's just, it helps. I guess it really does help. I mean, I'm sure I am grateful. I'm sure every single company or individual would like to have like kind of accolades and awards so that they can use them as a way to take advantage of and support their own businesses and themselves more, which is what we did. A lot of people do work with us because I was one of the most influential men in the world, or because I was one of the most influential men in food and drink, or because they've seen my TED talk. And I get that. I understand that completely. I understand why I had to do it. But I was doing that at the expense of my own health, or the expense of my relationships, and the expense of the business as well. And even now, I'm just looking at some pictures today of me with my son when he was like 2 or 3, because he was like 3 days old when I started the project. And he was in the cafe with me at 3 days old. And there's some pictures of him then with me in the old cafe like 8-9 years ago, and I was like a completely different version of what I look like now. I had I've got bad skin anyway, but I had really, really bad skin. Looked really, really stressed, really underweight, and it was just because I just didn't know when to stop. So I didn't realize the impact it was having on my health until I look back now and go, now I get to spend every other day on the beach and, and look after myself and plant-based diet and, more energy and more sleep, etc. So it was just putting all that focus into me, but in less of an egotistical way. I don't know how to advise people when it comes to stuff like that, because I think everybody has to reach a point in their lives where they make that decision. You can't just say to someone like, Jack, change your life, change your ways now, because it's not going to work. you're just going to carry on, or you're just going to decide that's not what you're talking about, like it's got nothing to do with you. And I think you've got to reach that point yourself. So either you do burn out, or you do get to those negative points where you think something needs to change, or you do it transitionally over a period of time, where you start to focus on your health more and be at work less and put more effort into your diet, etc., and your relationships over a period of time. And that's what I decided to do. It's first and foremost, a couple of good people left me in the organization, and I turned around and said, this can't just be them, it must be me. They're saying similar things to what people were saying to me 4 or 5 years ago, so it must be me. And I just went into therapy straight away and said, look, I am in danger of losing everything here if I don't stop doing what I'm doing, and I don't really know what it is I'm doing, because I thought this success and all these accolades were good things and everybody would love me and be around me all the time and want to be around me, but it wasn't the case. So yeah, went to therapy, and then I started looking at kind of like, plant-based diets, and then I started focusing much more on the environment and seeing my own impact, and then just working on myself a lot more, which changed my relationships with people at work, which changed the direction of the organization, and helped lay some of those foundations to allow me to have more time off so that people could be part of the organization rather than just following Adam Smith. And I think that's the best bit of advice I could give any kind of creator or founder or innovator is, it isn't about you. It might be your idea, I get it, but it's not about you. And if you want this to be successful and not just fall over when you leave, then you need to let go. And that also means letting go of yourself a little bit as well.
Wow. Great advice.
Inspirational.
Yeah, inspirational, powerful.
Got it all written down.
Final question then. So, I guess we wanted to know sort of where do you think we're going to be in 10 years' time, or maybe like as a double-edged kind of blade. Like, where do you think we're going to be, and where do you want us to be?
So, if you'd have asked me that 10 years ago, I think I could have answered much easier than now. I know a lot of things that are happening across the planet. We've obviously touched on some of those things. Closer to home, we live in fear of being on the verge of nuclear war. There is serious issues right now around access to food, especially with the invasion of Ukraine, and what's happening with food around the world. And obviously that's having an impact on oil and gas and transport and logistics. And then you've got what's happening politically as well. Some of the good news is obviously there's been a change in politics in Brazil, which may have a positive impact on what's happening in the Amazon. And for me, that was a big thing, and very positive. But then all you have to do is look at places like America and think there's a chance that Trump may be able to get back into power. Or if you look at what's going on in the UK and the division and the polarization we have in the UK, then you've obviously got people as well, the displacement of people, not just because of war, but also because of the impact on the environment. So less people living coastally, less people able to live rurally, and more concentrations into kind of major towns and cities. So it's really hard to say where we'll be in 10 years' time, because things are happening so fast. Every day we're getting a headline of a new president here, a war here, famine here, drought here, weather here, and you just can't keep up, and you don't know how much of it is sensationalism within media, and how much of it is actually having a negative or positive impact on us as a planet. So it's really hard. I think in 10 years' time, we're going to be in a very, very, very different world. Whereas if you'd have asked me 10 years ago, I don't think I would have said it so drastically. But I do think we're going to live in a very drastically different world in 10 years' time. I think not just in terms of like transport and infrastructure and people and accessibility to things like products and food, but I just think as a planet, we're going to be very, very different. We're going to look very different, and we're going to be acting very different in all aspects, because so many things are going to be happening and changing so drastically. Things that we probably don't even know about are going to happen to us very, very quickly. Are going to start happening in the next 10 years. All you got to do is look at, obviously, I keep mentioning the Frozen Planet episode, but when they looked at the ice caps and they found rivers underneath which they never knew existed, and some of these ice sheets were only a meter thick where they should have been hundreds of meters thick. It's quite scary to think that we're just finding out now that this is happening when 10 years ago we predicted this won't be happening for another 100 to 1,000 years, and 10 years later it's happened at a rate we've never seen before or never even understood. So we're still discovering things, we're still finding things out. There may be positive things that happen, less deforestation in the Amazon is going to have a huge impact on us globally, but at what expense? What do we do instead, and how do we kind of revert back to some of the ways that we were? Can we go back? I don't know if we can go back. We can keep planting trees all we want, but is it really going to have that much of an impact in the time frame that we've got? Trees take 15 to 25 years to mature, and we've got to start thinking of what's going to happen tomorrow. Where I would like to be is there's a book called Ecotopia by Ernest Callenbach. It was written in 1970s. I'd like to be exactly where they are. San Francisco becomes independent of America and they go completely radical, kind of left-wing eco-radical, and it's fiction, but I'd like to be in that world. I'd like to live in a world where they double the workforce and half the working week. That'd be amazing. And we could all learn skills and crafts and go out and make bow and arrows and hunt, I don't know, whatever, Hunger Games style. I don't know if we're ever going to get there, and I think it's all just completely ideological and utopian future that we're never going to reach. I'm struggling to find positive kind of channels out of some of the major things that are happening across the world when so much of it is happening at the same time.
I guess
we just talked about
with like so much negativity kind of, there's a lot of scary things happening, isn't there? And I think what I want to know is how is it that you can get out of bed? I think you said you got up at 3:30 in the morning or something. What gets you up in the morning? What like motivates you? Because it is terrifying, the things that are going on, and you're working in this industry where it seems almost insurmountable to be able to tackle this. So what motivates you and what makes you think, what, I'm going to go out there and smash it today and do something good?
It's quite easy for my children, really. I don't want to lay on my deathbed and say I didn't try.
Yeah.
I think that's one of, I know I've touched on a lot of the doom and gloom, and it does come across really negative what's going on, and it's hard to move away from it, but we need a lot more people to try. The efforts that the user box and the team there do, and the things that we do at Service to Purpose, but there's millions of projects around the world that are trying to do positive things in a world which is seemingly dark and difficult. So, a million people trying is better than, one person trying to be perfect, I guess. But I just wish that a lot of the negative stuff that is going on, that it wasn't all happening at the same time all over the world, and you'd have to wade yourself through it. So if there was just an invasion in Ukraine that the world had to deal with, maybe that's one thing we could focus on. But we just come out of COVID. People are still dealing with that, and coming to terms with that. There's a lot of loss of life for that globally, reconnecting with people, etc. And then we've got obviously an invasion in Ukraine. We've got rise of food prices globally, deforestation, unnatural weathers. You just I can't just wish it just one day we'd wake up and we'd have a headline that was nice and positive, and we could just feel hope. But then, like you said, there's lots and lots of amazing people and organizations out there all trying to do something, slightly different, more sustainable, raising awareness, be more ethical. I just would like to live in a world, if it was my world in 10 years' time, where all those organizations were more connected and those people were more connected. Because I feel like you can make a decision now, which we've never been able to make ever in our history of the human race, where you can choose to be part of the problem or you can choose to be part of the solution, because we know the answers now. We know that reusing a box is better for the planet than buying a new box, or eating surplus food is better than going out and buying unsustainable, unseasonal food. We know these answers now, and the accessibility to these products and these services are much greater than ever before, and people can make that conscious decision now to be a part of that solution. And I just feel like if they were more connected and people could make the choice to be part of the solution, then those that are part of the problem can carry on being part of the problem, because you're not going to change their mind. You're not going to stop them from drilling oil. You're not going to stop them from eating meat. But the people that are choosing to be part of a world which is a solution could potentially be part of a more positive future. And I feel like that's the world I'd want to live in, where it's up to me, where I want to be putting my energy and allegiances. And I just feel like at the moment, if you choose to be positive, you're still part of the negative world. You're still part of the same systems and the same processes and the same destruction and negativity, despite trying to do good things. And I just feel like, it's hard to wade through all of that. Whereas if you are part of the solution and a lot more people are connected, and you could, I don't know, cycle somewhere, and you could, grow your own food, and you could work for a company that's ethical and supportive, and do all those things, and everybody could be part of doing those things more, then I feel like we wouldn't have to worry about the doom and gloom and the negative stuff, because, maybe our positive actions are a bit greater impact than some of the more negative actions. But I just feel like we get really, really caught up in all this negativity and doom and gloom, and we just feel like there's no way out and there's nothing we can do because it's huge.
I think it helps me when we connect with like-minded businesses or organizations, and ones that are more purpose-driven. It definitely makes me feel a lot better and more inspired to take
people
action.
Say they should create echo chambers, but like on my LinkedIn, I go on, and sometimes it's like the most positive thing I've ever been on is LinkedIn, because the people that follow me in the businesses, obviously I see your work at Reusable Boxes and the videos that you do, and I'm always like really inspired by that. And then I see like Tony's Chocolonely, and I see the work that they're doing, and I see Stephen Bartlett come up on the thing, and he's posting something that he's written on Twitter of something positive, and you just think, it's all like really cool, isn't it? Like everything's very happy and shiny out there. But so they say don't create echo chambers, but sometimes that stuff, I kind of need it. I need to look on that and see, wow, look at what they're doing, look at how cool it is. Like,
I think
I just wish there was more of it.
Yeah, I think there's nothing more powerful than a community of like-minded people.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing. And we shouldn't be afraid of supporting and championing and following those that are similar to us either. And being accused of creating echo chambers, because I want to be part of those, relationships and initiatives and innovations that are doing good things. I want to be part of that. I don't want to be on a page with loads of right-wing fascists. Like, why would I want to do that? It's just not who I am. So I don't see why I would have to follow that just so that I don't create an echo chamber. It's silly. So I love it. I mean, LinkedIn for me is one of the greatest platforms for me, because it allows me to connect with all those businesses really easily, and it allows me to showcase our work and for people then to get involved in us without it kind of being preachy or having these barriers in terms of connections. I know there's the premium profile, etc. Like that, but it's opened up a whole new world for us. I think it might have even put us in touch with yourselves as LinkedIn, and maybe seen some work that you've done. We can keep in touch. We can choose to be a part of it. We can share it, but there's not that focus on that. You can just enjoy having a wall of, positive people and organisations, and just being a part of it. I really enjoy that. So there is a lot of positives. I just wish we were more physically connected, as people and organisations, because we seem to be sporadic pockets of people all over the world doing sporadic things. But we just need to be more connected, which is very hard in this day and age, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess that's a wrap. Well, we got there in the end after we got through the technical difficulties, but
yes,
I think,
sorry about that. Yeah,
I think that was a great podcast. It was really amazing to hear your perspective.
Yeah, thank you for that, Adam. Yeah, that was quite inspiring, actually.
Yeah, I want to go out and do stuff.
Doing LinkedIn.
Do some bin diving.
No, I'm more than honoured. I obviously love what you guys do, and I wish I could do more to support it. But keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks for listening to Earth Your While, the podcast that uncovers the truth about how to make your business better for the planet. We hope today's been Earth Your While.
Earlier this year, we joined a group of inspirational business leaders who pledged to plant 1 million trees over the next 10 years. If you'd like to help us reach our goal, or you'd like to find out some more information, head over to reusableBox.co.uk/earthyourwhile.